Chapters 61-63. Ray and Conan were in the land of rain on a quick detour when Tsunade suddenly popped next to them. Ray raised his eyebrow at her and asked. Done in Konoha. That was fast. Tsunade pouted at his sarcasm and embraced him. As she hung around his neck, she started complaining about her time in Konoha, making Ray laugh a bit. He patted the head of the sullen small blonde in his arms. Ma, it's fine. He bemusedly told her. You going to fight Hanzo? Tsunade asked as she saw Amigekure a few miles in front of them. She also noted that neither Ray nor Conan had their Hitayate on them. AIM was isolated so not many rumors would be able to escape it, but it seemed like they were overly prepared. Yup. Ray nodded. There should be a salamander that could help you with creation rebirth. As Tsunade heard him saying they are going to face Hanzo for her. She couldn't help but feel her heart flutter. Her expression softened as a determined look entered her eyes. I will fight too. She half expected to be rebuffed, but to her surprise, Ray only nodded. Sure. He shrugged. For Ray, Tsunade was strong enough to get out of this fight alive even without her creation rebirth. She was a lot stronger than before after their training. The trio finally arrived near the Amigekure and didn't have to wait long after they flexed their chakra. At first, 10 Jonin of AIM appeared to question them about their intentions, but before they could speak, Ray sent 10 needles formed out of Raiton chakra, killing 9 of them while the last one barely evaded and shunshined away. Ray didn't mimic the Chidori techniques of Sasuke. How could he? Sasuke was not born yet. It was obviously his original, right? Hell, Kakashi didn't even invent Chidori yet. Obviously, the jutsu was invented by Ray. What original of Kakashi? The kid obviously only copied it from yours truly. Mahahaha. It didn't take long for an entire army of 200 AIM nin appearing in front of them and Ray and Conan just molded their Suiton chakra while Tsunade weaved hand seals. Suiton, tsunami stream. 3 voices chorused as the water all around them lifted and 5 meters high, crushing waves covered the small army rushing at them. Well, but seriously. When will the last boss appear? Ray mumbled. Hanzo in his tower frowned. He saw what happened and could only sigh. No matter how many he would send, they would be drowned by these 3 assailants. He couldn't see them well, but, obviously, 3 Suiton users in a country perpetually covered in water was a dangerous combo. There was only one conclusion. He had to get involved himself, so with another sigh, he was off to face these insolent twerps. It didn't take him long. He arrived in front of the intruders quite fast but was surprised by what he saw. The blonde woman and the pale blonde kid were making out. Now he felt insulted. But he was a patient and polite man. He waited until they finished. He would give them time for their last kiss. Did he mention he was generous too? 5 minutes later. Oi. He was not that generous. Ray finally stopped licking Tsunade's mouth as he heard an annoyed voice from behind him. He turned only to see an old man with a breathing mask who was looking at them with a deadpan stare as his eyebrow twitched. Oh. Sorry, old man. We are a bit preoccupied now. Could you come later? Ray asked politely, discreetly preparing for a fight. No. Hanzo answered in deadpan, but then his eyes trailed to the blonde woman and he squinted. You've, the Senju. He looked at her as if she was stupid. Didn't you receive enough of a beating the last time we met, girl? He asked her mockingly, remembering her temper from the last time. Tsunade just uncaringly shrugged, startling Hanzo. Don't care. As she said that, thick tree trunks sprang from the ground around Hanzo and their branches attacked him. He was bewildered but managed to dodge as he saw the flatlands near his village being changed to a forest. Grumbling, he took out his kusarigama and enhanced it with futon chakra as he mowed tree after tree in his vicinity. He suddenly found himself a target for a big fireball and clapped his hands, calling forth a water wall. A sizzling sound resounded through the newly made forest as the fireball met water wall and vapor started being created, covering the forest in a mist. Conan used that mist to discreetly move her papers all over the forest, making sure they were unseen by Hanzo. They were fighting while trying to not use any of their signature jutsu. Ray was good at this as he revealed only his Suiton, Raiton, and Kenjutsu so far, but her. She had at most her Doton and Futon jutsu and those were quite limited. Hanzo leaped up as he felt danger and a second later, 10 water needles impacted the place he previously stood. Ha, nice dodge. Ray's voice resounded through the mist. Hanzo was about to reply when his feet landed on a branch and, he only barely managed to jump away while coating his feet in Suiton chakra to prevent damage as the branch exploded. Paper tags, now that's insulting. Hanzo commented dryly. Paper tags were the basics of basics. To use them against him. He couldn't help but praise them mentally. He landed on the ground and threw his kusarigama to the right, making it vanish in the mist. Rei was about to unleash a right-ton jutsu as Hanzo stood in a puddle of water, but he had to dodge to the left as kusarigama suddenly flew at him. Fuck, he can sense me. Rei was quite bewildered but didn't have time to ponder as the chain connected to the kusarigama jerked and the blade flew at him. He blocked it with a kunai and leaped back, but the kusarigama's chain again pulsed and the weapon just followed Rei while he blocked its slashes and weaved through the trees but was unable to shake off the scythe. You are too green. Hanzo chuckled as Rei had to use supreme effort to evade his technique, but then his eyes went wide. Shit! He exclaimed as he sidestepped a downward punch from Tsunade and saw as the ground and the entire surroundings broke, creating large pieces of the earth that rose at the pressure the punch exerted onto the ground. Ah, you did have massive strength, didn't you? Hanzo said when he landed a bit away and instantly threw a kunai behind himself. Sneaking. That won't with dash. Boom. Away from the battlefield, Conan chuckled. Simple always works. Hanzo coughed as he felt his back slightly burned, anger flooding him. Paper tags again. He grumbled as he unsheathed his second kusarigama and blocked a flurry of shuriken enhanced by futon chakra in instant only to spin on his heel and block Rei's kunai. The two men stood and tried to overpower each other. You are good, kid. Hanzo praised but then noted the smile on Rei and read his lips. His eyes opened wide as. Boom. The real Rei, a bit away, chuckled. Third time he fell for it. He turned to Conan and high-fived while Tsunade could only chuckle. Hanzo's eye was twitching as the dust cleared. He was not injured. He could block a freaking paper tag. That's academy-level stuff. Or at least, it should be. He had enough proficiency in the Suiton to do so. But it was annoying as heck, his reputation was suffering. Sighing, he put his hands together, his index fingers pointing upwards. You asked for it, brats. He started quickly weaving hand signs and ended it with crouching and powerfully pushing his right palm into the water on the ground. Suiton, shredding wave. Rei and Conan cursed as they felt the chakra fluctuate and a huge amount of Suiton chakra was pushed into the jutsu. Rei knew that Tsunade couldn't yet sense that well through the nature energy to distinguish what jutsu was used as she focused more on Mokuton, so he jumped to her and took her in a princess carry before jumping up, where Conan already formed a platform of papers. They could only watch as the very small amount of water on the ground suddenly pulsed, and from Hanzo's position as its center, it spread in ripple-like motion to the surroundings, gathering more and more water, rising up to the level of a human chest. Despite being only that high, the wave of water was so pressurized, it literally shredded through the Mokuton trees and the forest Tsunade built, started falling down. Damn, that was a blow below the belt if I see one. Rei commented while Conan nodded as Tsunade could only wryly smile. That single jutsu covered a few hundred meters radius. It was the true testament to just how much Hanzo played with them during the fight. Hanzo casually stood on the ground among the felled trees and coolly looked at the paper platform as he spun his kusarigama lazily, not drained or tired at all. Well. He started. This is entertaining and all, but I can't have you rampaging around MY Village, you see. You will just have to be good kids and die. He stopped his spinning kusarigama and stuck it into the ground as his hand started weaving hand signs. Kuchios no jutsu. He smashed his palm onto the ground and Rei smirked. Finally. Rei quietly muttered. The rest is yours, Conan. Rei enhanced his body with right-ton chakra and jumped towards the summoned salamander. Their goal was finally reached. As the summoned salamander was about to ask why he was summoned, Rei, coated in right-ton chakra, entered its mouth. The salamander quickly closed it due to the unexpected feeling. Rei didn't need to do much. He only jabbed Chidori through the insides of the salamander and... Hanzo gaped as the salamander boss summon, his personal salamander, was minced from inside by lightning jutsu and then went puff. When Conan saw Rei safely enter the salamander's summoning realm, she turned to Tsunade. Go and enter our dimension. I will be there in a second. Tsunade wanted to protest but something in Conan's voice stopped her. Conan was completely serious and it was clear nothing short of total obedience would be tolerated. It was the same kind of voice her uncle Tobarama used on her when she pulled on his hair as a kind. Tsunade shuddered but nodded with utmost seriousness as she used the self-storing seal on her body to pop herself away. Conan smiled as she saw Tsunade disappear and turned to Hanzo who was glaring at her. Girl. Do you know what you just did? He coldly shouted. He tried to spark a conversation while he molded his chakra for a finishing move. Conan didn't care and just cracked a slight smile as she put her hand next to her face and pointed upwards. It was a calm and amused gesture that made Hanzo's have a bad premonition. He slightly arched his head back so he could look up without losing sight of Conan. His eyes squinted and his confusion turned into a confused one as he saw black clouds. It was the exact same black clouds that covered Amigakure all year long, showering it with rain. He pursed his lips and looked at Conan, about to mock her when his senses felt it, making his head snap back onto the sky with his eyes widened. You didn't think I just stood back without doing anything, did you? Hanzo heard the amused voice of the girl but couldn't bring himself to care. He had bigger problems than her. His respiration mask almost dropped on the floor as he saw it. The clouds were torn apart due to sheer wind pressure, stopping the ever-present rain for the first time in months. But it was not the sky that greeted Hanzo's sight. Far from it. He gulped as he saw 100-house-sized brown balls of rock falling from the sky as flames licked their surface, creating a fiery spectacle aimed straight at him. The wind was visibly washing over the meteorites as they pushed their way through it. Well then, I will be off. Good luck. Conan uttered in a smug tone and ported herself away. Hanzo's head snapped onto the spot Conan just disappeared from and he cursed. He didn't have time. His hand snapped into a rapid flurry of hand seals as he started raising a wall of the earth after a wall of earth to make the surface as uneven as possible in the hope to mitigate the damage this would cause his village. These meteorites were worse than normal ones. They were a ball made of Conan's Doton-hardened slices of paper. Millions of them stacked on each other to create a heavy and hard bowl. Conan would never be able to use this without the multi-W seal, raised dimension for creating Mokuton trees, and her Mokuton to paper conversion. It was a lot harder than normal earth, rock, almost surpassing metal or steel in hardness. Something like this impacting Earth at high velocity. For the first time in the history of the land of Aim, the heavens rained fire and earth. And then, the flaming meteorites impacted the ground, completely snapping any earth construct Hanzo was capable of making in the short 20 seconds he had. Loud booming explosions could be heard as one after the other, the meteorites landed, creating large craters due to the sheer speed they attained by falling. Shockwaves spread away from the landing place, destroying everything in their path as pieces of earth flew all around in a flurry of dangerous and fast projectiles, most of them set on fire. The clearing in front of Amigakure changed to fiery hell as more and more flaming rocks were sent all around, setting the previously created forest on fire, creating a maelstrom of an inferno that ferociously devoured the strong Mokuton trees. Fortunately for the Amigakure, it had its own sealing protections and some capable ninja as walls of earth and water raised almost instantly, in the hope to mitigate some of the damage. The ground trembled as if in pain from the impact, creating the first-ever earthquake Amigakure experienced. Shinobi barely managed to stay on their feet while the unfortunate idiots who stayed on the streets, gawking at the spectacles instead of hiding inside, were sent rolling and sprawling on the ground. But even then, the shockwaves came just a bit later and tore through the defensive jutsu as a knife through butter, and as weakened as they were from it, they impacted the closest part of the village to the landing place of the meteorites. The civilians on the ground were again lifted to the air as they powerlessly sailed, stopping only when their bodies crashed into some obstacles while the shinobi tried to brace themselves as the wind pressure made them slid back across the ground. The buildings creaked from the strong pressure, making the people inside weep and shake in their boots from fear of the buildings falling on their heads. It took an entire minute for the booming sounds of meteorites impacting the ground to finally cease. This minute was a nightmare for the inhabitants of the Amigakure as with every second, the earthquake got only stronger, with every second, another shockwave hit the village, with every second, the buildings groaned stronger and stronger from the pressure. It was a miracle no major damage was caused to the village and none of the fiery debris created by the impact actually reached the village. The Amigakure survived. Frightened, marked, traumatized, but survived. The clearing in front of it though, the very same clearing that now had no trees as every single one burned down, now contained a multitude of craters and dents. A stark reminder of what could have been if the meteorite shower landed a bit closer to the village. Hanzo's head suddenly popped out of the ground in the central crater, making his heart tighten as he saw the amount of destruction all around. He barely managed to use the hiding as a mole technique to bury himself deep enough to come out of this almost unscathed. But even then, the pressure of the landing of the meteorites sent vibrations through the ground and many of his bones were either cracked or broken while bruises marred his body. He was dirty, sweaty, covered in dust and earth, and angry beyond belief, but he was scared first and foremost. Hashirama Madara is another world-shaking monster crawling its way out to the world. His shaky eyes couldn't stop staring at the many wide craters. I will need stronger ninja, more ninja. I will need a better deterrent. Hanzo glumly thought. He fancied himself strong. He knew he had nothing on the real monsters in this world but these rarely paid attention to him and in this era with both Hashirama and Madara dead. With the first and second Kage's death, he thought he was finally getting back into the top 3, at least. Hanzo had no idea what the reason for this attack was as fortunately, he and his village came out of it relatively unscathed and the biggest losses were his summoned animal and a few shinobi but he couldn't deny that it happened. It was time to start strengthening the village in the earnest. Thoughts like these fearfully swirled in his head as he limped his way through the devastated land, back to his village. It was time to take the game seriously again. Determination filled his being. Determination to survive. Determination to train. To become stronger. To make Amigakure greater. Hanzo regained his long-forgotten resolve as he survived the obvious reminder of the era long past. In Rei's personal dimension, Tsunade watched Konan as she teleported herself inside the dimension, taking off her raincoat with a nostalgic smile as she shook the water out of it on the porch. What happened? Tsunade asked worriedly, her eyes trailing on Konan's frame, trying to find even the smallest of wounds with worry in her gaze. I am fine. Just showered Amigakure a bit. Konan dismissively waved her hand in a no-big-deal gesture. I definitely lived up to the reputation of downpour. Konan's lips stretched into an amused and knowing smirk. Suiton jutsu, ha. Tsunade accepted the explanation with a nod, not really caring all that much. But this was Hanzo they just faced. Of course, she was worried about her sister facing him alone. Let's cook something for Rei. Konan excitedly told Tsunade as she took her hands into hers and dragged her to the kitchen. Tsunade quickly forgot her questions as both girls expectantly awaited their beloved while preparing a meal, peacefully chatting away the long while as they enjoyed the warmth and comfort of each other's presence. In the end, both girls ended up covered in flour and cream after their escapades in the kitchen. Well, nobody said they actually could cook. The body of the dead and bloody salamander boss summon appeared inside the summoning realm of salamanders. It had many cauterized holes all around its body caused by Rei's lightning jutsu that blasted it from inside out. A lot of salamanders looked at it with bewilderment clear in their eyes, never expecting the strongest salamander of the younger generation to die so brutally. But before they could react, the body exploded outwardly in a massive show of blood and gore, covering the closest ones in blood and gore while obstructing their vision. As the salamanders were still shocked by the death of the boss summon, thousands of Rei's water clones burst out of the now exploded corpse and started to attack the salamanders with abandon. Explosions filled the immediate surroundings and the battlefield started spreading further and further, the further the clones reached. But they were only a distraction. Rei covered himself up in nature energy and started sneaking around, evading the battle. The entire salamander realm was turned upside down. Fighting resounded through the cavern system as water splashes and explosions were the most frequent sounds. It was then that the oldest and most experienced battle veterans of Salamander Realm showed up and with them, water. Humongous amounts of water jutsu started drowning the clones as the cavern started to be flooded. Rei didn't care, he located his target and was on his way towards it. Axolotl's salamander as big as a building was smashing two clones right and left with his body, heavily relying on its regeneration. It was a magnificent sight. Axolotl had a massive regenerative factor by itself, but when it got enhanced by nature energy, the beast became nigh unkillable unless he was struck in a vital area. Cut off his limbs or tail, heck. Destroy half of its brain or snap its spine and it could just regrow it or reconnect the nerves. Even puncturing the heart wasn't fatal. This salamander was his goal. He needed a proper gift for Tsunade, after all. The Kagaya clan is good and all and their regenerative factor is amazing, but even they can't survive with their heart or brain injured. Axolotl could. Axolotl filled with nature energy. Oh boy, Tsunade will have a field day with this guy. Rei giddily thought. He naturally didn't want his girls in harm's way, but he wasn't naive to think it would never happen. If he could help Tsunade to make a jutsu that would make her semi-immortal ever-regenerating battle monster? Why not? He was all for it. The axolotl just smashed a clone into the ground with his tail, cracking the ground, impacting the water there, sending it all around. Rei knew he had to sneak attack it. Fighting with it would attract attention and such a durable thing like the beast in front of him would have ample time to get reinforcements. He might be supremely strong, but he had no idea what salamanders could do and didn't like charging forward blindly. But then again, there was nobody who knew what salamanders were capable of. Rei doubted even Hanzo was fully aware of their strength. After all, the guy was never taught senjutsu, for one. It was then, 5 of his clones jumped at the axolotl from the sky, distracting it, and Rei instantly used his very own improved Suiton, water dome to trap both him and the salamander inside. It was his own derivation of the water wall and raised a very dense and chakra-soaked water dome all around Rei. The dome was quite durable and nothing short of borderline S-rank jutsu could penetrate it, which showed at the chakra cost of creating it. But Rei knew that direct confrontation against an ever-regenerating opponent would last ages, a time he definitely didn't have, so he decided to be sneaky and for once act like a ninja. The second the wall covered both the axolotl and Rei, tens of clones were made from its walls and jumped the axolotl from every direction, distracting it with their attacks. The beast was instantly startled and started thrashing itself madly around in hopes to defeat as many clones. At least, it looked like a thrashing, but by the number of clones that were already smashed, Rei surmised it's some form of salamander taijutsu. He didn't create the clones for offense though. No, he created them so he could hide amongst them. The Axolotl was too focused on destroying the clones and Ray could approach it unseen. As he neared the side of the summoning beast, he smiled to himself. The Axolotl indeed didn't notice the real Ray in the middle of his clones. Killing it would be so easy. Just separating the head from the body, no matter how big of a regenerative factor the beast had, it would not survive decapitation. Alas, he needed the beast alive so Tsunade can study it, and that made his task so much harder. He decided to go for it quite brutally as he stuck his Chikuto up to the handle into the side of the Axolotl. Before the beast could even let out a yelp of pain, however, Ray coursed finely controlled right ton chakra through the blade, paralyzing it. From that point on, the clones jumped towards the paralyzed beast and quickly started drawing binding seals all over it. 2 minutes of a dozen clones doing the seal work and the beast was prepared to go. Ray used a specially developed stasis seal for living beings to stash it away. It was kinda anticlimactic and was a stark reminder to not be conceited even when one is almost immortal. One sneak attack. That's all that's needed to end your life. Ray's shoulders slumped relaxedly as he tried to sense the battlefield. Damn, I already lost 2/3 of my clones. Now that surprisey dash, suddenly his body tensed again and he frowned as he slowly turned his head to the right and quickly stepped to the side with his eyes widening. Not a second later, a stream of highly pressurized water cut straight through the water dome jutsu, almost hitting him as it sailed through the spot he earlier stood at, and then effortlessly cut through the other end of the water dome. Seeing that, Ray's eyes twitched as he instantly prepared for a battle. It didn't take long for his water dome to fall completely and he saw 2 salamanders. One was completely black with watery blue streaks on its skin and the other was dull green. These 2 were obviously special as he instantly recognized the difference that set them apart from other salamanders he saw so far. They both had light green eyeshadows and as Ray felt the energy around them, his frown widened. These 2, new senjutsu. His expression twisted into a minuscule scowl as he realized that his chakra hiding technique through the nature energy might have backfired since the 2 senjutsu users clearly could pinpoint him even amongst tens of his clones. But it was not the time to ponder about that weakness. He instantly schooled his expression and smiled cheekily. Isn't that a bit too dangerous? Welcome, geezers. Ray quipped towards the ancient salamanders who eyed him warily under the guise of senility. He wasn't about to underestimate them due to that though. Huh, no answer. Ray nodded to himself. Guess you aren't the most eloquent of your species then. He exclaimed and fought the urge to smirk as he saw his words had an effect on the 2 beasts. Cliff Kuan, laughing face.